Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Boccaccio. I'm Senior Associate Director of Admissions here at Columbia Business School. So excited that you are joining us for an MBA Information Session. I'm joined by my colleague, Emma Case, who will be monitoring the Q&A box throughout this session. And I'll talk a little bit more about how you can use that shortly. But thank you so much, Emma, for being here. And we are also joined by two current students at CBS who are part of the Hermes Society, which is a group that volunteers on behalf of admissions and are our admissions ambassadors on campus. So we are so excited to have them here. And I'll have them introduce themselves. So Sahar, if you could go first, if you could introduce yourself with your name, where you're from, what you did pre-MBA, and what it is you hope to do post-MBA.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Sahar Abdullah. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. And then after going to undergrad in Nashville, I made my way up to New York working in wealth management. And after CBS, I'm pursuing investment banking. And I'm in the class of 2023. So this is my first year.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Flock. Originally from the New York metropolitan area. My undergrad at Georgetown, then stayed in Washington for about 12 years, working in government relations, representing private sector interests before the government. I started CBS in January 2021, and I'll be graduating this spring. Good to meet all of you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sahar and Robert, for being here. So I see some folks are already utilizing our Q&A box. I just want to go over quickly how to use that. So you'll see the option to select Q&A at the bottom of your screen in the toolbar. And we are using upvoting today, which means that when you submit a question, everyone is able to see it. If you would like to have a question answered that you see somebody else has asked, you can hit the thumbs up button, and that will let us know that it's a popular question that folks want answered. And as I mentioned, my colleague Emma will be answering questions, some typing in questions answers throughout, and some we will be answering live from me, Sahar, and Robert at the end of the session. So hold tight. If you have questions that are being sent in there and they aren't answered yet, we might be getting to them at the end. And some of your questions you might actually get answered as we go through portions of the presentation. So thanks so much for being patient on the Q&A there. So a bit about what it is we're going to cover. So we're going to go over the academic experience at CBS and the world-class knowledge that is available to us through courses and our premier faculty, the unmatched access that you have by doing an MBA in New York City, our dynamic community through our clubs, conferences, again, New York, and our alumni, resources available to you both to find a job post-MBA, but also to fund your MBA, and then finally, the application process. So before we dive in, I just want to note that this session will be focusing on the full-time MBA. There are three different options to apply to obtain a full-time MBA, either starting in August, starting in January, or our deferred enrollment program, which is an option for current college seniors or people who did a one-year master's directly after undergrad and want to apply in order to attain an MBA a few years down the line. So you apply in your last year, and then you, if you're offered admission, go to work for 2 to 5 years, and then return to CBS in order to get your MBA. And actually, Sahar is a deferred enrollment applicant herself, so she can speak to that process. Robert did the January entry program, so we have some great folks on the panel who can talk about those two programs in addition to the August entry program. We also have the executive MBA. So if there are any folks who are joining us who are interested in working while achieving an MBA, so taking classes on the weekends through our executive MBA program, that is absolutely an option for you. We have an option that does both Friday and Saturday classes as well as Saturday classes, or our MBA Global program, which is a partnership with both Hong Kong University and London Business School. I won't be going over the ins and outs of the executive MBA program today. This will be focused on the full-time MBA program. But if you have questions about that, feel free to check out our website or attend an executive MBA info session. So as I mentioned, we do have the two options for the MBA as far as entry points. So both the August entry and then the January entry. So the difference is really the summer internship. So if you are someone who wants to make a big career switch, definitely the August entry program makes the most sense because you have the opportunity to do a full-time 3-month summer internship in between your first and second year. But if you're someone who wants to stay in a similar industry, someone who is returning to a family business, or you're sponsored by your current company, or if you're an entrepreneur who really just wants to get their own business off the ground, all of those are great reasons to choose the January entry program, which is an accelerated program, only 16 months, and you are in classes during that summer semester instead of doing a full-time summer internship. I'd love to just ask Robert, why did you choose the January entry program?
Katie, that's exactly why I chose it. It's a 16-month program. It's the only program I applied to, largely because, working for 12 years, I'm not trying to transition careers. The summer internship wasn't something that I needed or even wanted to do. This would enable me to do the program as quickly as possible, and frankly, the best program possible.
Amazing. That's great. And that's really the reason why so many folks choose January entry. It's accelerated, it gets you through, and especially if you're in someone like Robert's position where you don't necessarily need to do all that networking and full-time kind of recruiting to get that post-MBA role, it's a great option for you. So first we'll dive into academics at CDS. So we have over 300 faculty members on staff at Columbia Business School, half of whom are research-based faculty. So those are folks who are on tenure track, who are pictured here. 152 are tenure track faculty members, and these are people who are experts in their field from a research perspective. So they have PhDs in their field. They've been studying this for a long time. We have people like Sheena Iyengar, who's pictured here, who is an expert, world-renowned on decision-making and choice. She teaches a class called Think Bigger, which is all about innovation and creativity and experiential learning. We have folks like Oda Netzer, who's pictured here, who's actually a marketing expert and also teaches a class on Israel and the startup nation. So these are faculty members who, as I said, are experts in their research field and are often teaching our core courses in addition to our elective classes. And then the other half of our faculty is made up of adjunct faculty who are people who are working and teaching on the side. So these are folks who are experts in their field from a practice perspective, and you get the benefit of learning from people who are actually in the field working right now, and you can really understand what exactly is going on in the business world right now, instead of just being separate from it in academia. So we really think that with the combination of half adjunct and half research-based faculty, that you're getting that great mix of both theory and practice. So here I love to highlight Melissa Berman, who teaches our global philanthropy class. She is actually head of Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors. So she is someone who is absolutely ingrained in the nonprofit and philanthropic world, and she's the one teaching you about it in our elective courses. Matan Griffel, who is teaching our Python class. It's a really popular class. It's specifically designed for MBA students. So if you're someone who wants to learn how to code, or maybe you're going to manage people who are coding someday and you want to know what the ins and outs are of what they're doing, that's a great class to take and a really popular one. So I'd love to ask Sahar, who has been a faculty member who you've enjoyed learning from so far?
Yeah, so we actually just had someone come over from UVA, Lalane Anik, for marketing. And honestly, that's been one of the best classes I've taken so far, just because she made the course so interesting. And it's funny, when I was going through my networking for banking, I met someone that attended UVA, and he was like, "Oh, we lost this great professor to Columbia." And he was saying it's Lalane, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, she was my professor." And yeah, I totally agree. She was awesome. But I think it really speaks to the types of professors that Columbia invests in. They really care about their students, but they also care about the work they're doing.
Amazing. And UVA's loss is definitely our gain. I've heard wonderful things about her, so that's wonderful. And so I just want to dive into how you're going to learn from these professors, what that format looks like at CBS. So first you start off with your core curriculum. So your core classes are all the ones in green on this slide. And this is the foundations that you need in order to build on with electives later on. But this is what we think every business leader needs to know: leadership, stats, strategy, accounting, corporate finance, et cetera. We only have one full semester of core courses at Columbia, and then one additional ops management class in your second term. So really the majority of your time at CBS is spent in electives, choosing what courses you really want to take in order to make your MBA experience yours. So I think that's a great piece of the CBS curriculum, is just how flexible it is. But starting off in the core definitely sets that baseline for you. And you take all of your core courses with your cluster, which is a group of about 70 students. And it's a microcosm of the larger class as a whole. So we have about 550 students who start every year in August, and about 200 plus students who start every year in January. And of those larger classes, about 70 per cluster. And in your cluster, you're also on a learning team, and that's a group that works together to do all your projects, your case studies for these core courses. So you're taking every class with your cluster, you're working on all your projects with your learning team, and it really becomes kind of your family at CBS, especially for your first semester. I'm going to go to Sahar again because you just went through the core, just made it through the core. Congrats. Can you tell me a little bit more about your learning team, what types of folks were on it and what that experience was learning with a learning team?
Yeah, so every one of us, so I think there are 6 of us on the learning team, all come from different backgrounds. We have a couple of international students. Some people are more experienced than I was because I did come from the deferred enrollment program. I only worked for a couple of years. And I think that was the beauty of the learning team. It was people that I probably would not have met had I not been placed in a learning team with them. But over the semester, we've become so close. We have little dinner parties at each of our apartments. And really, I think one of the other things is that we're all very understanding of each other. So a couple of us were going through recruiting right now. And so a lot of people took on the slack then. And I know that whenever, some people were free to take on more of the projects that they would, because they understood that, it was a give and take situation. And so we've all come together and worked hard, at the end of the day, that it hasn't been really like that we've worried about grades or, how well we're doing on the project. It's what we're learning from each of these projects. And I think that that's been a great aspect of it. And I've now called them one of my closest friends. I think whenever I have something big to share, it's like I go to my learning team first before anyone else.
I love to hear that. I love to hear about the give and take on the learning team too, because that's something I've certainly seen. And I know our Office of Student Affairs, who designs these learning teams, does it really intentionally so that there are people who feel like they're, an expert or more knowledgeable about certain skills or certain areas. And then there's places where you're going to learn more from your other team members. So they're really designed to be super diverse in terms of background and all those types of things. And our hope always is for those learning teams to become really tight-knit groups and kind of your closest friends at CBS. So I love to hear that happened with you, Sahar. That's wonderful. So as I mentioned, you start off in the core, you spend about a semester in the core, one last operations class in your second term, but then the majority of your time is spent in electives. So let's talk a little bit more about what you can expect from that experience. So we only have 6 different areas of study kind of highlighted on this slide, but please know that we have 14 areas of study across so many different disciplines at Columbia. And we have electives across all 14 areas of study, 340 plus electives, which is more than any of our peer schools. So choice and flexibility is really important in the CBS curriculum when it comes to electives. So I love to highlight, if you are someone who is interested in, say, launching your social enterprise startup, you might take some classes in entrepreneurship, you might take some classes in social enterprise, kind of mix and mingle depending on what makes the most sense for you. You do not major in something specifically. You don't have to have one specialization. You kind of choose whatever class makes most sense for you. So I'd love, Robert, since you've been in electives for a little bit, to tell us about your favorite elective class you've taken so far.
Sure. So, and I kind of grouped mine differently. So, like over the summer semester, I took a lot of like entrepreneurship and media and technology courses, and then took a couple more media and tech this past semester in the fall. But I actually really concentrated on like strategy type courses, kind of continuation of strategy formulation you have in the core curriculum. So the two, frankly, best courses I've taken at CBS thus far were Driving Strategic Impact with Marco Viola and Winning Strategic Capabilities with Alonzo Martinez. They're both former management consultants. I think they actually both worked at Booz Allen for many years. And they really kind of give you the frameworks and tools management consultants use to, identify problems and then offer recommendations to clients to solve them. I found that course to be super helpful, obviously, for anyone who wants to go to management consulting, but frankly, anyone who's going to be in a situation where they're interacting with clients and presenting recommendations. I think, just to touch briefly on the adjunct professors, I was able to take a course over the summer called Internet Wars with Jared Grusit, who's the chief strategy officer of Snap. He's also a CBS alum. I think opportunities to take classes with, not only practitioners, but leading practitioners is something that's definitely unique to CBS, particularly given its location. It's truly advantageous, especially as you're kind of building your own curriculum and making a plan for your career post CBS.
I love that you brought up Jared Grusit. He's like one of the, I would say, top adjunct professors that people want to learn from, especially because of his role at Snap, which he actually got during the course of his tenure at CBS. He used to be at the Huffington Post. And I remember students were like so excited, like, is he going to stay on to teach? And he did. And he's, unbelievable. So yes, I love that you brought that up, that you're really learning from people who are doing it day in and day out and also somehow have time to teach CBS students. So that's an amazing piece of it. So certainly a wide range of electives here. Want to also point out, while we have an incredible diverse array of electives within Columbia Business School, you can also take up to 2 courses at any other graduate school at the university. So if you're someone who wants to take a law school class or classes at our School of International and Public Affairs, those courses are also potentially available to you as well, which is great. So let's move into unmatched access. We were just talking about how important it is that we're here in New York for things like our adjunct faculty. It's also really important for the access to companies. So many global headquarters are in New York City. So many of these companies are really seeking out CBS students. And we have a track record of kind of attracting top companies who want CBS talent. So this is just a few of the companies who are actually recruiting at CBS, or where our students have ended up for internships or full-time roles. But being in New York City, you really do have this unmatched access to the corporate world, which can't be understated. And another piece of this is also the guest speakers that come to both your classes or conferences or other events that happen throughout the year. So oftentimes in elective courses that are taught by these adjuncts who have unbelievable networks, they will have guest speakers come in and give guest lectures, people who are experts and heads of specific companies. Oftentimes for conferences, which I'll dive into clubs a little bit more in just a bit, but our student clubs will plan conferences that invite some of these amazing guest speakers to come and speak. For example, I saw Tyra Banks virtually through the Black Business Students Association conference this past spring, and she gave just an unbelievable talk moderated by 2 CBS students. And she was talking all about, kind of building your brand, but then also gave a live SMIZE demonstration, which was amazing. So really diverse array of guest speakers who are coming in to class day in and day out. If one of my students could speak to guest speakers, maybe a guest speaker you've seen in class or through a conference, who is really impressive to you. However,
So I've actually had a ton of guest speakers through my electives. I just took a course called Entrepreneurial Selling The professor's been with CBS for 22 years. And I think of the 6 courses we had, 5 of them we had in guest speakers, most of whom have been coming to his classes for like 10, 15, 20 years. So we had like the president of the New York market for Bank of America. We had someone who leads a family office for a member of the Walton family down in Arkansas. We had someone who is a venture capitalist who was previously in private equity and banking. And they kind of all talked about how, although they're not necessarily in sales directly, how like sales skills have contributed to their success. They've talked about their career journey. I think that's a really great opportunity to hear from folks who aren't necessarily names you're reading about every day in the news. They're not going to be the headline speaker, at a conference at CBS. But the person I mentioned who is, the president of the North American market for Bank of America, I spoke with him after class. We've connected since then. He's put me in touch with people at his company. So I think those are really kind of door opening opportunities for students to kind of develop a personal relationship with someone who is really just a guest speaker for your class because they have a relationship with the professor and enjoy doing it once every few months.
Yeah, I've heard stories of students, for example, even getting in-semester internships through guest speakers who come to class. Someone who comes every year, and a student makes a connection with them and says, like, I'm really interested in your startup, for example, and ends up leveraging that connection into an in-semester internship, which is something that students do here because you do have that flexibility in your schedule and in being in New York to do a few hours a week at a small company startup, or a company that has the flexibility to take on an in-semester intern. So that's a really great experience, and certainly those connections are super important. So I want to move on to finally community. So one piece I want to highlight here is our honor code. So this kind of sets the tone for the experience at CBS. It's something you actually sign when you first join, and it's put up in all the classrooms on campus, but just how important truth, integrity, and respect are. And that's something that we are looking for in our applicants as well as we build our class. So a major part of the CBS experience are clubs. You're in business school to build your network a lot of the time, and clubs are a great way to do that, whether it's through your professional clubs that focus on a specific industry, your social clubs or your impact organizations that focus on volunteering, and then affinity clubs that might align with a different social identity that you might hold. All 3 of these different sections, students are often members of groups that are across all 3 of these sectors. So the Hermes Society, which both Robert and Sahar are part of, is one of our volunteer organizations, as I mentioned earlier. But I can't understate how important professional clubs are, because oftentimes they're the ones who are holding those conferences we mentioned. They're the ones who are facilitating mentorship connections between second years and first years, mentorship connections with alums, job opportunities are flowing in through those clubs. So that's really important, in addition to building community through our social and affinity clubs. Sahar, I'd love for you to talk about what clubs you've leveraged most so far in your time here at CBS.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, as I mentioned before, I'm recruiting for banking. So Investment Banking Club was a natural pick for me. So that's definitely been really helpful. And I think one of the biggest aspects of that is the help of second years. So it's awesome to see second year students who've already landed jobs actually put in the effort to help first year students. They don't need to. There's no necessary oh, this is a requirement, but they do it because they were also passed down that help, that assistance. And so it's something to give back, to pay it forward. And I really appreciate that. And as for other clubs too, it's great. I didn't know if I wanted to pursue real estate. So I joined the Real Estate Association. And with that, I've gotten to go to some great real estate tours, hear some awesome speakers. And so it's something that is an interest to me. So it's something that I want to be a part of still, even though it's not something I'm pursuing professionally. And then there's some really fun clubs too. So I'm a part of the volleyball club because I used to play. And so it's nice, when it's a nice day outside in Central Park, we can go play volleyball. or even the wine club. That's a pretty popular one everyone really likes. And I can definitely say I see why. And even like the Latin American club, I'm not Latin American, but they're very welcoming. They host parties at times when it's safe to do so. And so it's awesome to get to meet other students as well.
I feel like, sorry, I was about to say people are usually members, about 5 to 7 clubs and active in about that many. And you just totally exemplified that through your examples there. And I love that you're part of clubs that, might not align exactly with like your recruiting interest, but it's just something you're interested in learning more about. So we definitely encourage students to take that approach when exploring clubs at CBS. And you don't have time to be a part of all of them, so you kind of have to prioritize, but it's really important to make those connections. And I love what you said about the investment banking club and paying it forward. I think that's really a part of the kind of the values of CBS, is that pay it forward mentality. Second years doing things for first years because when they were first year or second year did it for them, and that moves into our alumni network as well. So that's a really important piece of life at CBS. I also want to highlight the Phillips Pathway for Inclusive Leadership, which is a new co-curricular program that we have at CBS, and is really important to community building, especially when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So there is actually an essay question about the Phillips Pathway for Inclusive Leadership this year. So we want to share a little bit more about that and what it's designed to do. The goal is that we want to give every CBS student the skills to become an ethical and inclusive leader during their time here. And so they do that by attending events and workshops. You have to attend at least one per semester and then write a reflection on it afterwards. And that's really a great way just to learn more about other communities, but also develop your inclusive leadership skills. For example, I know the Art Society, which is a club on campus, partnered to host a Phillips Pathway for Inclusive Leadership event this fall, which was attending Caroline or Change, which is a Broadway show all about the civil rights movement. And they attended that Broadway show and then had a talk back session with members of the cast and also members of the Broadway theater itself. And they were talking about, as a theater and an organization, what were they doing to develop their diversity, equity, and inclusion plan? So things like that, great experiential learning opportunities are available through PPIL, and you attend at least one per semester. And then finally, I mentioned our alums a couple of times. We have almost 50,000 CBS alums worldwide. So almost anywhere you are, there is an alumni club. There are alums who want to help you. There are alums who want to connect with you. So if you are interested in, for example, recruiting somewhere outside of your home country or your home city and making connections, this is absolutely something that's available to you. We have, as I said, alumni clubs all over the world. And the CBS name and CBS brand and CBS network really does extend worldwide. So finally, we're going to dive into some resources before we go over application details. So our Career Management Center is the one-stop shop for all career support. They offer one-on-one advising, alumni, coaches, second years, again, coming up again as peers and mentors, but we have second years who are designated as CMC fellows. So that's a paid position where students are trained in order to give career advice to first-year students. Also, the Exectives in Residence program. This is like, I feel like a kind of best kept secret of CBS. These are executives who are at the top of their field, either former partners or heads of boards who are in residence with our Career Management Center and available for you to schedule one-on-one conversations with. So Tus Darubala, who is a former head of McKinsey, was with them for 30 years, is now an executive in residence at CBS who you could sign up for, one-on-one conversation with. So these are folks who help you kind of see your career long-term and where you want to be. So a great resource. But the Career Management Center is really important in kind of prepping you in order to recruit. So I'd love to hear from Sahar. Did you use the Career Management Center resources in your kind of on-campus recruitment process?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the best things I found was the second year peer CMC fellows. We were actually paired up or grouped up with a CMC fellow based on our industry of interest. And then you're able to continue to meet with that CMC fellow, or if you choose to meet with someone else, and it's actually encouraged to try and meet with other CMC fellows as well. So I was able to meet with a couple, and I had some one-on-one advising too. I think that Columbia really emphasizes the importance of the Career Management Center. And I think that it's been instrumental in my career search. So I think it's a really great resource. I'm really excited to get to use the executives and residents too. I think that's one of the reasons why I was so interested in Columbia too when I was applying, is I saw that and I found it so interesting that there are these people that are at the top of their fields willing to help Columbia students just because, you know, they see the value in it. I think that's incredible.
Amazing. And I think one thing I didn't mention about the CMC, which is so important, is you get access to it even before you start. So the summer before you arrive at CBS, you have your first welcome advising appointment. You get to find someone a CMC advisor who focuses on your industry interests, and they get to kind of walk you through, what do you think your recruitment plan is going to look like, and then you continue that relationship throughout your time. But we really want to provide you those resources to succeed when you're at CBS, and make sure you have a career plan in place. And then on the other side of the support, we want to talk about financial aid as well. So resources for financial aid are really varied at Columbia Business School. We have different pots of money for both merit-based and also need-based aid. So merit-based fellowships are given out through the admissions committee, and you have to apply by tomorrow, January 5th, in order to be eligible for merit-based fellowships if you are interested in joining our August entry class. So definitely, if folks have questions about that merit-based deadline or about merit-based aid, feel free to send them into the Q&A. But you are evaluated based on the merit of your application. So whether that's your test scores, your professional background, where you're from, there are certain scholarships or fellowships that are for people from specific countries or with specific volunteer interests, that type of a thing. But we give out those awards as an admissions committee. And then need-based scholarships, that's a separate pool of money that is given out based on your neediness, and you apply for that after you've been offered admission. So that's an important piece, is that after you're offered admission, you fill out a financial aid application that's sent directly to our financial aid office. And they work really closely with you and are an incredible resource. I can't recommend our financial aid folks enough, but that's another separate pot of money that's available to you. And then finally, I want to just talk about loans as well. So we have loans available for the full cost of attendance, as well as a no U.S. cosigner international loan, which is really important for our international students. I would say most of CBS students are kind of using a combination of these different types of aid, whether it's loans, scholarships, fellowships, and then their own savings as well to pay for their MBA. So finally, next steps, the application process. So we have a holistic application review at CBS. Each of these pieces in this wheel is not more important than the other. We are looking at all three in combination. And I'm going to dive into what we are requiring for each section, but please know, as I said, it's a holistic review process. So you really have to be strong in all three in order to be admitted to Columbia Business School. So we're looking at your academic strength. We talked about our core courses and our elective courses. They're amazing, but they're also very rigorous. And we want to make sure that you can manage that rigor of the classroom and contribute and thrive in a CBS classroom. So in order to determine that, we're going to look at your undergraduate record. And if you have any graduate transcripts as well, we'll look at those too. Unofficial transcripts are fine to submit for our application process. And we'll look at your GMAT, GRE, or executive assessment. So we offer all three options for the test. And there are three different ways at getting the same information. So as a test taker, you will certainly find one, I would say, that works best for you. But as a school, we are agnostic to which test you take. So take a few practice tests if you haven't decided already to determine which test is best for you. And then in looking at your professional promise, that's kind of the next section of this wheel here, we're trying to build future business leaders at Columbia Business School. So we want to see that you're already on that upward trajectory. You're someone who's kind of made waves already at your current company or in your current industry. You're taking on projects. You are someone who's seen as a leader, and we want to kind of see that you're already, as I said, on that upward trajectory. So we're going to look at your professional resume. We'll look at one letter of recommendation, likely from a supervisor. I'd say that's the most common person for that recommendation to be from. We'll ask for your post-MBA goal and just like a short little blurb about what it is you want to do post-MBA. And then we ask for you to expand on that in essay 1, which asks, what are your goals the next 3 to 5 years, and what's your long-term dream job? And then finally, the interview also touches on your professional promise, but I'll get back to that shortly. So personal characteristics. So we talked a lot about the community at Columbia. We want to be intentional in building that community. Think of people who are going to pay it forward, who are going to be a fit here. So we're going to look closely at your personal characteristics in order to determine that. So whether that's your extracurricular activities outside of school, when you were an undergrad, outside of work. Now we understand that maybe if you're working 80 hours a week, you might not have time for a ton of extracurricular activities, but we also ask about your hobbies, which is one of my favorite sections to read. So even if you don't have kind of structured extracurricular programs that you work on, if you like to hike or cook or listen to podcasts, we ask you about that type of information too. And then finally, essays 2 and 3 get a little bit more of these personal characteristics. So this year for the application process, we have a menu of picking 2 of 3 options. So we have an essay prompt about the Phillips pathway for inclusive leadership that I alluded to earlier, where we talk about 5 inclusive leadership skills and ask you to tell us about a time when you were challenged around one of those inclusive leadership skills. We have an essay question that asks, why is Columbia Business School a good fit for you? And then we have an essay question that asks you to tell us about your favorite book, movie, or song and why it resonates with you. So you pick 2 out of those 3. We have no preference as an admissions committee of which 2 of 3 you pick. My advice, if as you read those prompts, 2 really stand out to you, you immediately have some ideas percolating, go with those. Definitely go with your gut and whatever is most authentic to you. And then finally, the interview. So if you were offered an interview, interviews are by invitation only. So they're kind of the next step in the process. If you're offered an interview, it will be with an alum and it will be virtual. So a member of our alumni ambassadors, who are kind of like our Hermes Society with current students, but alums who interview on behalf of the admissions team, they will be matched with you and they will interview you. You should think of it very much as you would a job interview or professional interview. They're looking to see, are you a good fit with Columbia Business School? Can they see you becoming a, future business leader? Do they see you fitting on their learning team or in their cluster? Those types of questions. So the interview is really getting at both the professional promise and the personal characteristics side. And I would say one important tip for the interview, they don't read your entire application. Our interviewers just have your resume in front of them. So make sure your resume, is what you would like a CBS alum to see if they were to interview you. And if you're offered an interview, that is, as I said, like kind of the next step in the process. And then we review it as an admissions committee along with the rest of your application to make a final decision. So let's talk about deadlines and timelines. So if you are someone who is thinking ahead to start in 2023, please know that the deadlines that have passed here will likely be very similar for next year. So our January entry program deadline is almost always in early October. So if you're someone who's interested in our January entry program, you can likely plan ahead for around that date. We have early decision as an option. So if you're thinking of August 2023 start and CBS is absolutely the place for you, you definitely want to, if you were offered admission to CBS, you would accept. That's what early decision is for. That will likely be an early October deadline as well. Early decision is a great option if you are sure that CBS is definitely the school for you, and you are signing something when you apply to CBS that if you're offered admission, you will accept. And then finally, regular decision. We have 2 deadlines that are still yet to come. One tomorrow, as I mentioned, our merit-based fellowship deadline. That's our most popular deadline of the year. And then finally, regular decision wraps up on April 8th of 2022. Probably the most important part of this slide is a little note at the bottom. We have rolling admissions at CBS. So we do not review applications in rounds. We review them in the order in which they are received, and we render decisions in the order in which those applications are received. So if you are applying for our deadline, that's tomorrow. If you were to submit, today, you would be reviewed before someone who submitted tomorrow. So that's something that's important to keep in mind. We are always, admitting people who apply on the very last day, but those tend to be very, very strong applications. So just know that you're giving yourself the best chance to be admitted if you apply sooner rather than later. So that's important to keep in mind. Just so you know a little bit more about our timeline. So once you hit submit, if all of your application materials are received and your application is complete, it's about 6 weeks from when you hit submit to when you hear back if you've been offered an interview. From the date of your interview, once that is complete and your feedback is received, it's about 2 weeks from that date that you hear back if you're offered a place in the class. So everything goes according to plan, about an 8-week process, give or take, for hearing back. Just want to touch on a few other deadlines because at Columbia Business School, we have lots of different options to apply and lots of different programs to apply for. So the consortium, we are a member of the consortium. So they also have a deadline tomorrow. If you don't know about the consortium, that is an application process that's kind of like the Common App, where you can apply to multiple business schools through one application. And the focus of the consortium is to increase the representation of Black, Latinx, and Native American MBA students. So if you're from one of those populations or you have a demonstrated commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, you can apply through the consortium by the January 5th deadline and apply to CBS through the consortium rather than to us directly. Our deferred enrollment program, which Sahar participated in, that has a deadline of April 15th, 2022. So if you are someone who's a current senior in college, or you did a 1-year master's degree right after college, you can apply at that time for the deferred enrollment program and defer up to 2 to 5 years. I would love for Sarah, can you tell us why you chose to apply to the deferred enrollment program?
Yeah, so when I was a senior in college, I think it was the first year that it was being rolled out. And I found that I was going into a 2-year rotational analyst program with a bank, and I wasn't sure if it was the right decision for me. I thought, I might want to do something afterwards. And so when I found out about the Columbia Deferred Enrollment Program, I thought, why not? It can be something that I can utilize down the road if I do want to go to business school. I can apply now and then decide later, when's the right time to go. And it just so happened that after the 2 years of my work of my rotational program, it was a good transition to go into business school. So I think that if you're thinking about business school in the future, it's a good idea to just apply because what's the harm, right? It can be an option to have, and it's something that I definitely do not regret. I think Columbia has been awesome so far, and I'm really excited for the experiences I have yet to come in the next semester and the next year too. So it's definitely something that I would advise if you are considering business school.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's one of those options that if you are sure business school is what you want, it's a guaranteed place in the class in the future. So definitely, I think it's an important piece to think about. And if you have more questions about deferred enrollment, please do let us know. We do have specific deferred enrollment information sessions as well, and recordings of those on our website too. And then we offer a 3-year JD MBA with Columbia Law School that has different deadlines. So February 15th, 2022 is the next one that's coming up. We also have dual degree programs with many different programs at Columbia. So whether it's School of International and Public Affairs or the Journalism School or medical school. So there's lots of ways to get a dual degree at CBS. The 3-year JD MBA is the only one that has different deadlines. For all the other dual degrees, you just apply directly to the MBA program and directly to the other school. And then you kind of combine your schedules if you get into both programs. And then finally, the executive MBA, which I mentioned at the top of the session. There are lots of different deadlines for the executive MBA. It also has rolling admissions, and those deadlines are program dependent. So again, if you're interested in a specific executive MBA program, let us know, or attend one of the executive MBA info sessions as well. If you have more questions, I want to offer you a place to send them. So apply at gsb.columbia.edu. I'll also throw it in the chat. This is the one-stop shop to ask any questions prior to tomorrow's deadline or future deadlines. So definitely reach out to our admissions counselors there and ask your questions. We also have our Hermes Society who you can reach out to as well and talk to great students like Robert and Sahar. I want to thank Robert and Sahar so much. They're still on break right now. They aren't in classes. So they are being very generous and sharing their time with you all today. So I just want to give them a little round of applause on my side. Thank you so much for your time today. And thank you all for your time as well. I know if you're wrapping up applications, it's a very busy time for you. So we appreciate you spending an hour with us. Best of luck to all of you, and we hope to see your application. Bye, everyone.